everyone. I'm trying to do videos while I'm driving. I have a 4-hour drive ahead of me. Oh my God. This is Deborah. Welcome to my channel. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 68. I've been on here for about 11 years. YouTube has changed a lot since I've been on. But today I want to talk a little bit about my father. We didn't call him father, we called him daddy, okay? He was 6'4.5", and I've often said this, that he was just as good looking as Elvis. Yeah. Right up there, yeah. One of my uncles, we were at the racetrack because he was racing his rail. We would travel up and down the East Coast racing, and he looked at me really strange one day and he goes, "Debbie, you look just like your dad." Yeah, I guess so. But my father reminded me a lot of Andy Griffith, okay? He was in the Army. He only had a 7th grade education. And he got his education from watching John Wayne movies, war movies. That's how he got his education. And
head south on US 50 East, Ocean Gateway toward Maryland 404 East. Continue on US 50 East for 12 miles.
So just ignore that too. Okay. All right. He was very striking. He was a ceramic tile setter. One time I remember he went and did a swimming pool, an outdoor swimming pool in ground. He came back with the most gorgeous tan and a little bit of white gray hair on his sideburns. Oh my God, he was just gorgeous. I once asked one of my aunts if he had, if she thought he had affairs, and she looked at me and started laughing. She goes, "He didn't have to go looking for women. The women came looking for him," and I can believe that. But he was married to my mother their whole life. And this is the thing that I've noticed with my ex and with my dad. Whenever you have an occupation where you don't have to punch a time clock and you're sole proprietor, you can pretty much go and do what you want during the day, and your spouse will never know. Like my dad would go to the horse track. He'd go to Charlestown. We all spent a lot of time there. He would go to cockfights, chicken fights, So yeah, and of course my ex, remember sometimes during the summer he would, no, I guess it was during the winter, when it gets dark about 5 o'clock in the winter, he wouldn't come home sometimes till 8 or 9. He says he was out giving estimates. Honey, you cannot give estimates for tree work in the dark. Yeah, my brother's wife pointed that out to me. Like I said, I'm a little naive. Okay. Yeah, so back to my daddy. He was a man of very few words. The one things that would make him mad is if you stood in front of the TV, then he would speak up. He was always surrounded by children and grandchildren, and he was definitely old school, and he smoked. He smoked Salem's most of his whole life, which caused him to pass when he was 67. And to this day, I hate cigarettes. I hate what it did to him. It destroyed his looks. His skin got real leathery. If you're smoking, stop. You're looking 20 years older than you need to be, because I had not seen my dad once for about 3 years, and when I went to see him, I went in the other room and started crying because I couldn't even recognize him. It was very sad what cigarettes does to you. He had hardening of the arteries. He had a heart attack. But he only disciplined us when my mother told him to, and it was with a belt. All he had to do was pretend like he was taking off that belt, and all of us kids, our hearts would just roll over. Oh my God, I know it killed him. He never wanted to do that, but I can name the times he whipped me maybe on one hand, not even that much. Now my mother mother's a different story. With her, it wasn't a belt, it's whatever she could pick up. This is old school stuff, right? Nowadays, parents, they're afraid to touch their child because they'll get reported, right? I think some children need to be a little whacked on the butt. I'm talking about when they're younger, you know. I don't believe in whipping a child that's over 5 or 6. If you haven't instilled in them their manners by then, you're going up a long road, a hard road. But back to my dad. He loved Maxwell House coffee. Every morning he would sit, have his coffee, and smoke some cigarettes. And he loved 60 Minutes. He loved the news. And he was a gentleman's gentleman. I mean, the only thing that I didn't like about him is that he never played with us like dads do nowadays. And he never took us, very rarely did he ever take us one-on-one somewhere. Now kids, I really think parents should take their children one at a time and do something special with them. But he never had annual leave. He never had vacation. He worked every day. I think he had Sundays off. Of course, we would end up at church and he would end up resting at home. But yeah, towards the end, he went to church a lot. We were a Baptist family. But back then, we had newspapers, no internet. He always read the newspaper. And I don't know if I was his favorite, I do believe, until my brother was born. Then my brother was his favorite, of course. So then he wanted children to be seen and not heard. And my other siblings would talk and cause a ruckus, I guess, but when they went to bed, I would ask my father if I could stay up late with him, and we would watch, back in the 60s, we would watch Chiller, Thriller, all those. That was the only thing on at midnight, because back then the TV would cut off after a certain time. I don't know why this truck is got his emergency flashers on. I don't know that. I was delayed 20 minutes already on this trip. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I would fix him a snack. And my father had, like, cement poisoning, you know, because back then you had to mix your own thin set with lime and cement. And I would put Noxema on his hands. And he would give me $1, and I would give it back to him. I didn't want his money. Yeah, and he loved to have his hair combed. And I remember sometimes he had migraines. Now, his mother was part Indian, and when he got a migraine, which wasn't that often, he would put a big, thick rubber band around his head to compress, you know, the nerves there. But my mother and him would get into it sometimes. I've never seen my father hit my mother, but I know that he did. You know, this is before child abuse, domestic violence. You know, this was back in the 50s and 60s, people. But he has built most of the schools, or tiled most of the schools in Northern Virginia. He has done many apartment high-rises in Alexandria. And, yeah, he often told me a couple of his regrets. One of them was not writing down every job that he ever did. Wouldn't that have been something to see actually where he had done remodeling? I used to help him a lot of times on tile jobs. Usually he hired my boyfriends, you know, on a Saturday or whatever. But he has, I think, trained or mentored over 100 men in the ceramic tile business. He did marble, slate, terrazzo, and Even one of my sisters helped him do tile work. Of course, my brother. And then when I got married, he taught my ex how to do tile work now. So yeah, he has been one of the, I guess, formidable ceramic tile setters in Northern Virginia. He had an opportunity to buy the land at Tyson's, but he went to Korea instead. If he had only bought the land in Tyson's Corner, oh my God, can you imagine? But when he came back, he bought a 350-acre farm in Winchester, and that was where I lived when I was in first and second grade, and then in third grade we moved to Oakton, Virginia. So yeah, he would work up in Northern Virginia and come back to Winchester and Gainesboro on the weekends. And remember, he bought me my first bicycle, and I didn't have any older siblings to teach me, but I got on it. And the first bike he bought was somebody stole it from him. I got on the bike and I ran into the ditch, and that was the first bad word I ever said. I said, I'm not riding this damn thing. They still laugh about that. But my father was a wonderful human being, and when he passed, I actually went to the funeral home to make sure that he really was gone. And when I saw him, I actually passed out. It's the first time I've ever passed out when I saw him. Oh my God. So love your parents.